Hi, y'all. You know what time it is. Get into it. It's story time. It's story time with Chris, and we're back with Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. And shout out to the Yellow Springs t-shirt shop because they have beautiful designs for their mugs. I just got this recently. It's really pretty. Ah, yes. Green tea with pomegranate, which is one of my favorite fruits. And of course, I don't own the music that is playing in the background, which is, of course, being. I love Mr. Ambiance because I'm gonna have to message them and see, if I can plug them for another movie. Another video, not another movie. What am I talking about? Okay, so. Let me see if I can do something about this lighting. Hold on 1 second. Ouch! There we go. Hey, there it is. A bit brighter. I am showered. I am refreshed. Oh. I hope everybody's having a good day. It's a happy Monday. And without further ado, we're going to begin our next chapter, Chapter 5, with one of my favorite Wonderland residents. So we will soon see how it goes. A-E-I-O-N A-E-I-O-U. For those who are familiar with the Disney film. There are other versions of Alice that are really, really good. There's a couple of live-action ones. There's one from the 90s with Whoopi Goldberg as the Cheshire Cat, and then there's one from like the early 70s that is really good with Sammy Davis Jr. that was really good. If you have any adaptations that are your favorites, please let me know. I'm not a huge fan of the Tim Burton Alice films. They're good. They're not accurate, but they're good. Like, they are definitely up there in the absurdity scale of what this story is so famous for. So, without further ado, I will begin. Chapter 5. Advice from a Caterpillar. The caterpillar and Alice looked at each other for some time in silence. At last, the caterpillar took the hookah out of his mouth and addressed her in a languid, sleepy voice. "Who are you?" said the caterpillar. This was not an encouraging opening for a conversation. Alice replied rather shyly, I hardly know, sir. Just at present, at least, I know who I was when I got up this morning, but I think I must have changed several times since then." "What do you mean by that?" said the caterpillar sternly. "Explain yourself." "I can't explain myself, I'm afraid, sir," said Alice, "because I'm not myself, you see." "I don't see," said the caterpillar. "I'm afraid I can't put it more clearly," Alice replied very politely, "for I can't understand it myself to begin with, and beginning so many different sizes in a day is very confusing." "It isn't," said the caterpillar. "Well, perhaps you haven't found it so yet," said Alice, "but when you have to turn into a chrysalis, you will some day, you know, and then after that into a butterfly, I should think you'll feel a little queer, won't you?" "Not a bit," said the caterpillar. "Well, perhaps your feelings may be different," said Alice. "All I know is it would feel very queer to me." "You?" said the caterpillar contemptuously. "Who are you?" Which brought them back again to the beginning of the conversation. Alice felt a little irritated at the caterpillar's making such very short remarks, and she drew herself up and said, very gravely, "I think you ought to tell me who you are first." Why? Said the caterpillar. Here was another puzzling question, and as Alice could not think of any good reason, and as the caterpillar seemed to be in a very unpleasant state of mind, she turned away. Come back, said the caterpillar, called after her. I have something important to say. This sounding promising, certainly, Alice turned and came back again. Keep your temper, said the caterpillar. Is that all? Said Alice, swallowing down her anger as well as she could. No, said the caterpillar. Alice thought she might as well wait as she had nothing else to do, and perhaps after all it might tell her something worth hearing. For some minutes it puffed away without speaking, but at last it unfolded its arms, took the hookah out of its mouth, and said, So you think you're changed, do you? I'm afraid I am, sir, said Alice. I can't remember things as I used to, and I don't keep the same size for 10 minutes together. Can't remember what things? Said the caterpillar. Well, I've tried to say, how doth the little busy bee, but it came different. Alice replied in a very melancholy voice. Repeat, you are old, Father William, said the caterpillar. Alice folded her hands and began. You are old, Father William, the young man said, and your hair has become very white, and yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think at your age it is right? In my youth, Father William replied to his son, I feared it might injure the brain, but now that I'm perfectly sure I have none, why I do it again and again. There's Father William and his son being very silly in the field. You are old, said the youth, as I mentioned before, and have grown most uncommonly fat. Yet you turn a back somersault in at the door. Pray, what is the reason for that? In my youth, said the sage, as he shook his grey locks, I kept all my limbs very supple. By the use of this ointment, 1 shilling the box, allow me to sell you a couple. You are old, said the youth, and your jaws are too weak for anything tougher than suet. Yet you finish the goose with the bones and the beak. Pray, how do you manage to do it? In my youth, said his father, I took to the law and argued each case with my wife, and the muscular strength which it gave to my jaw has lasted the rest of my life. There he is, turned a back somersault. This is what I want to be like when I get over the age of 50. Still doing cool stuff. Because aging is an inevitability, while age is a state of mind. Sorry, y'all. There we go. You are old, said the youth. One would hardly suppose that your eye was as steady as ever. Yet you balance an eel on the end of your nose. What made you so awfully clever? I have answered 3 questions, and that is enough, said his father. Don't give yourself airs. Do you think I can listen all day to such stuff? Be off, or I'll kick you downstairs. Seriously. Coolest guy around. He's balancing an eel on his nose. If anybody could do that, you message me. You let me know. That is not said right, said the caterpillar. Not quite right, I'm afraid, said Alice timidly. Some of the words have gotten altered. It is wrong from beginning to end, said the caterpillar decidedly, and there was silence for some minutes. The caterpillar, was the first to speak. What size do you want to be? It asked. Oh, I'm not particular as to size, Alice hastily replied. Only one doesn't like changing so often, you know. I don't know, said the caterpillar. Alice said nothing. She had never been so much contradicted in all her life before, and she felt that she was losing her temper. Are you content now? Said the caterpillar. Well, I should like to be a little larger, sir, if you wouldn't mind, said Alice. 3 inches is such a wretched height to be. It is a very good height, indeed, said the caterpillar angrily, rearing itself upright as it spoke. It was exactly 3 inches high. But I'm not used to it, pleaded poor Alice in a piteous tone, and she thought to herself, I wish the creatures wouldn't be so easily offended. You'll get used to it in time, said the caterpillar, and it put the hookah into its mouth and began smoking again. This time Alice waited patiently until it chose to speak again. In a minute or two the caterpillar took the hookah out of its mouth and yawned once or twice, shook itself. Then it got down off the mushroom and crawled away into the grass, merely remarking as it went, One side will make you grow taller, and the other side will make you grow shorter. One side of what? The other side of what? Thought Alice to herself. Of the mushroom, said the caterpillar, just as if she had asked it aloud, and in another moment it was out of sight. Alice remained looking thoughtfully at the mushroom for a minute, trying to make out which were the 2 sides of it, and as it was perfectly round, she found this a very difficult question. However, at last she stretched her arms round as far as they would go and broke off a bit of the edge with each hand. And now, which is which? She said to herself, and nibbled a little of the right-hand bit to try the effect. The next moment she felt a violent blow underneath her chin. It struck her foot. It was a good deal frightened, but this very sudden change, for she felt that there was no time to be lost, and she was shrinking rapidly, so she set to work at once to eat some of the other bit. Her chin was pressed so closely against her foot that there was hardly room to open her mouth, but she did at last, and managed to swallow a morsel of the left-hand bit. Come, my head's free at last, said Alice in a tone of delight, which changed into alarm in another moment, when she found that her shoulders were nowhere to be found. All she could see when she looked down was an immense length of neck, which seemed to rise like a stalk out of a sea of green leaves that lay far below her. What can all that green stuff be? Said Alice, and where have my shoulders got to? And oh, my poor hands, how is it I can't see you? She was moving them about as she spoke, but no result seemed to follow except a little shaking among the distant green leaves. As there seemed to be no chance of getting her hands up to her head, she tried to get her head down to them, and was delighted to find that her neck would bend about easily in any direction like a serpent. She had just succeeded in curving it down into a graceful zigzag, and was going to dive in among the leaves, which she found to be nothing but the tops of the trees under which she had been wandering, when a sharp hiss made her draw back in a hurry. A large pigeon had flown into her face, and was beating her violently with its wings. Serpent! Screamed the pigeon. I'm not a serpent, said Alice indignantly. Leave me alone, serpent! I say again, repeated the pigeon, but in a more subdued tone, and added with a kind of sob, I've tried every day and nothing seems to soothe them. I have the slightest idea what you're talking about. I've tried the roots of trees, I've tried banks, I've tried hedges, the pigeon went on, without attending to herself, but those serpents, there's no pleasing them. Alice was more and more puzzled, but she thought there was no use in saying anything more till the pigeon had finished. As if it wasn't trouble enough hatching the eggs, said the pigeon, but I must be on the lookout for serpents night and day. Why, I haven't had a wink of sleep these 3 weeks. I'm very sorry you've been annoyed, said Alice, who was beginning to see its meaning. And just as it had taken the highest tree in the wood, continued the pigeon, raising its voice to a shriek, and just as I was thinking I should be free of them at last, there must needs come wriggling down from the sky, oh, a serpent! But I'm not a serpent, I tell you, said Alice. I'm a... Well, what are you? Said the pigeon. I can see you're trying to invent something. I'm a little girl, said Alice, rather doubtfully as she remembered the number of changes she had gone through that day. A likely story indeed, said the pigeon in a tone of the deepest contempt. I've seen a good many little girls in my time, but never one with such a neck as that. No, you're a serpent, and there's no use in denying it. I suppose you'll be telling me next that you've never tasted an egg. I have tasted eggs, certainly, said Alice, who was a very truthful child. But little girls eat eggs quite as much as serpents do, you do know. I don't believe it, said the pigeon. "But if they do, and then they're a kind of serpent, that's all I can say." There was such a new idea to Alice that she was quite silent for a minute or two, which gave the pigeon the opportunity of adding, "You're looking for eggs, I know that well enough. And what does it matter to me whether you're a little girl or a serpent?" "It matters a good deal to me," said Alice hastily, "but I'm not looking for eggs, as it happens, and if I was, I should want yours. I don't like them raw." "Well, be off then," said the pigeon in a sulky voice as it settled down again into its nest. Alice crouched down among the trees as well as she could, for her neck kept getting entangled among the branches, and every now and then she had to stop and untwist it. After a while she remembered that she still held the pieces of mushroom in her hands, and she set to work very carefully, nibbling first at one and then the other, and growing sometimes taller and sometimes shorter, until she had succeeded in bringing herself down to her usual height. It was so long since she had been anything near the right size that it felt quite strange at first, but she got used to it in a few minutes, and began talking to herself as usual. "Ah, come, there's half my plan done now. How puzzling all these changes are. I'm never sure what I'm going to be, from one minute to another. However, I've got back to my right size. The next thing is to get into that beautiful garden. How is it that to be done, I wonder?" As she said, she came suddenly upon an open place with a little house in it about 4 feet high. "Whoever lives here," thought Alice, "it'll never do to come upon them this size. Why, I should frighten them out of their wits." So she began nibbling at the right-hand bit again, and did not venture to go near the house till she had brought herself down to 9 inches high. Chapter 6. Pig and Pepper. For a minute or two she stood looking at the house and wondering what to do next, when suddenly a footman in livery came running out of the wood. She considered him to be a footman because of his... Is it livery or livery? We'll just pronounce it livery. We'll just go with that, in the way that it's spelled. Otherwise, judging by his face alone, she would have called him a fish. And rapped loudly at the door with his knuckles. It was opened by another footman in livery, with a round face and large eyes like a frog, and both footmen, Alice noticed, had powdered hair that curled all over their heads. She felt very curious to know what it was all about, and crept a little way out of the wood to listen. The fish footman began by producing from under his arm a great letter nearly as large as himself, and this he handed over to the other, saying in a solemn tone, "For the Duchess, an invitation from the Queen to play croquet." So here we have the two footmen. The frog footman repeated in the same solemn tone, only changing the order of the words a little.
"From the Queen, an invitation for the Duchess to play croquet."
Then they both bowed low, and their curls got entangled together. Alice laughed so much at this that she had to run back into the wood for fear of their hearing her, and when she next peeped out at the fish footman was gone, and the other was sitting on the ground near the door, staring stupidly up into the sky. Alice went timidly up to the door and knocked.
"There's no sort of use in knocking," said the footman, "and that for 2 reasons. First, because I'm on the same side of the door as you are. Secondly, because they're making such a noise inside, no one could possibly hear you." And certainly there was a most
extraordinary noise going on within. A constant howling and sneezing, and every now and then a great crash as if a dish or kettle had been broken to pieces. "Please, then, how am I to get in?" said Alice.
"There might be some sense in your knocking," the footman went on without attending to her, if we had the door between us. "For instance, if you were inside, you might knock, and if I could let you out, you know." He was looking up into the sky all the time he was speaking, and this Alice thought undecidedly uncivil. But perhaps
he can't help it," she said to herself. "His eyes are so very nearly at the top of his head, but at any rate he might answer questions. How am I to get in?" she repeated loud.
"I shall sit here," the footman remarked, "till tomorrow."
At this moment the door of the house opened, and a large plate came skimming out straight at the footman's head. It just grazed his nose and broke to pieces against one of the trees behind him.
"Or next day, maybe,"
the footman continued in the same tone, exactly as if nothing had happened. "How am I to get in?" asked Alice again in a louder tone.
"Are you to get in at all?" said the footman. "That's the first question, you know."
It was, no doubt, only Alice did not like to be told so. "It's really dreadful," she muttered to herself, "the way all the creatures argue. It's enough to drive one crazy." The footman seemed to think this a good opportunity of repeating his remark with variations.
"I shall sit here," he said, "on and off, for days and days."
"But what am I to do?" said Alice.
"Anything you like," said the footman, and began whistling.
"Oh, there's no use in talking to him," said Alice desperately. "He's perfectly idiotic." And she opened the door and went in. The door led right into a large kitchen, which was full of smoke from one end to the other. The Duchess was sitting on a three-legged stool in the middle, nursing a baby. The cook was leaning over the fire, stirring a large cauldron which seemed to be full of soup. "There's certainly too much pepper in that soup," Alice said to herself, as well as she could for sneezing. I gotta say, no shade to the Duchess, but that has to be the ugliest woman that one has ever seen. Which, kids, it's not nice to call anybody ugly, so don't do that. But she is just, she's got a just constant grimace on her face. And do you notice who's right here? Can you guess? Oh, yes. There was certainly too much of it in the air. Even the Duchess sneezed occasionally, and as for the baby, it was sneezing and howling alternately without a moment's pause. The only two creatures in the kitchen that did not sneeze were the cook and a large cat, which was sitting on the hearth and grinning from ear to ear. "Please, would you tell me," said Alice a little timidly, for she was not quite sure whether it was good manners for her to speak first, "why your cat grins like that?" "It's a Cheshire cat," said the Duchess, "and that's why, pig." She said the last word with such sudden violence that Alice quite jumped, but she saw in another moment that it was addressed to the baby and not to her. So she took courage and went on again. "I didn't know that Cheshire cats always grinned. In fact, I didn't know that cats could grin." "They all can," said the Duchess, "and most of them do." "I don't know any that do," Alice said very politely, feeling quite pleased to have got into a conversation. "You don't know much," said the Duchess, "and that's a fact." Alice did not at all like the tone of this remark, and thought it would be as well to introduce some other subject of conversation. While she was trying to fix on one, the cook took the cauldron of soup off the fire, and at once set to work throwing everything within her reach at the Duchess and the baby. The fire irons came first, then followed a shower of saucepans, plates, and dishes. The Duchess took no notice of them even when they hit her, and the baby was howling so much already that it was quite impossible to say whether the blows hurt it or not. "Oh, please, mind what you're doing," cried Alice, jumping up and down in an agony of terror. "Oh, there goes his precious nose," as an unusually large saucepan flew close by it and very nearly carried it off. "If everybody minded their own business," said Duchess in a hoarse growl, "the world would go round a deal faster than it does." "Which would not be an advantage," said Alice, who felt very glad to get an opportunity of showing off a little of her knowledge. "Just think what work it would make with the day and night. You see, the Earth takes 24 hours to turn around on its axis." "Talking of axis," said the Duchess, "chop off her head." Alice glanced rather anxiously at the cook to see if she meant to take the hint, but the cook was busily stirring the soup and seemed not to be listening, so she went on. 24 hours, I think, or is it 12? "Oh, don't bother me," said the Duchess. "I never could abide figures." And with that she began nursing her child again, singing a sort of lullaby to it as she did so, and giving it a violent shake at the end of every line. Speak roughly to your little boy and beat him when he sneezes. He only does it to annoy because he know it teases." The chorus, in which the cook and the baby joined, "Wah, wah, wah." While the Duchess sang the second verse of the song, she kept tossing the baby violently up and down, and the poor little thing howled so that Alice could hardly hear the words. "I speak severely to my boy, I beat him when he sneezes, for he can thoroughly enjoy the pepper when he pleases." "Wah, wah, wah," said the chorus. Here, you may nurse it a bit if you like, the Duchess said to Alice, flinging the baby at her as she spoke. I must go and get ready to play croquet with the Queen. And she hurried out of the room. The cook threw a frying pan after her as she went, but it just missed her. Let's pause for a second. Let's pause for a second. This is a very dysfunctional household. This is like very violent, passive aggressive. This cook does not like the Duchess. The Duchess doesn't like the cook. It's very mutual. Somebody needs help. But this is Wonderland where it's just absurd. It's just crazy. I love it. Alice caught the baby with some difficulty, as it was a queer-shaped little creature and held out its arms and legs in all directions. Just like a starfish, thought Alice. The poor little thing was snorting like a steam engine when she caught it and kept doubling itself up and straightening itself out again, so that altogether for the first minute or two it was as much as she could do to hold it. As soon as she had made out the proper way of nursing it, she carried it out into the open air. If I don't take this child away with me, thought Alice, they're sure to kill it in a day or two. Wouldn't it be murder to leave it behind? She said the last words out loud, and the little thing grunted in reply. Don't grunt, said Alice. That's not at all a proper way of expressing yourself. The baby grunted again, and Alice looked very anxiously into its face to see what was the matter with it. There could be no doubt that it had a very turned-up nose, which much more like a snout than a real nose. Also, its eyes were getting extremely small for a baby. Altogether, Alice did not like the look of the thing at all. But perhaps it was only sobbing, she thought, and looked into its eyes again to see if there were any tears. No, there were no tears. If you're going to turn into a pig, my dear, said Alice seriously, I'll have nothing more to do with you. Mind now. The poor little thing sobbed again, or it grunted, it was impossible to say which, and they went on for some while in silence. Alice was just beginning to think to herself, now what am I to do with this creature when I get it home? When it grunted again so violently that she looked down into its face in some alarm. This time there could be no mistake about it. It was neither more nor less than a pig, and she felt that it would be quite absurd for her to carry it any further, so she set the little creature down and felt quite relieved to see her trot away quietly into the wood. If it had grown up, she said to herself, it would have been a dreadfully ugly child, but it makes rather a handsome pig, I think. And she began thinking over other children she knew who might do very well as pigs, and was just saying to herself, if only knew the right way to change them, when she was a little startled by seeing the Cheshire Cat sitting on a bough of a tree a few yards off. The cat only grinned when it saw Alice. It looked good-natured, she thought. Still, it had very long claws and a great many teeth, so she felt it ought to be treated with respect. Cheshire Puss, she began rather timidly as she did not at all know whether it would like the name. However, it only grinned wider. Come, it's pleased so far, thought Alice, and she went on, would you tell me, please, which way I ought to walk from here? 'Twas brilling, and the slimy toes did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All a mimsy were the borgoes, and the mome rats outgrabe. That depends a good deal on where you want to get to, said the cat. I don't much care where, said Alice. Then it doesn't matter which way you walk, said the cat. As long as I get somewhere, Alice added as an explanation. Oh, you're sure to do that, said the cat, if you only walk long enough. Alice felt that this could not be denied, so she tried another question. What sort of people live about here? In that direction, the cat said, waving its right paw round, lives a hatter. And in that direction, waving the other paw, lives a March hare. Visit either you like. They're both mad. But I don't want to go among mad people, Alice remarked. Oh, you can't help that, said the cat. We're all mad here. I'm mad. You're mad. How do you know I'm mad? Said Alice. You must be, said the cat, or you wouldn't have come here. Alice didn't think that proved it at all. However, she went on. How do you know that you're mad? To begin with, said the cat, a dog's not mad. You grant that? I suppose so, said Alice. Well then, the cat went on, you see, a dog growls when it's angry and wags its tail when it's pleased. Now I growl when I'm pleased and wag my tail when I'm angry. Therefore, I am mad. I call it purring, not growling, said Alice. Call it what you like, said the cat. Do you play croquet with the queen today? And there is a fan favorite, the very cover of the book itself. Cheshire Cat and Alice. I should like it very much, said Alice, but I haven't been invited yet. You'll see me there, said the cat, and vanished. Alice was not much surprised at this. She was getting so well used to queer things happening. While she was still looking at the place where it had been, it suddenly appeared again. By the by, what became of the baby? Said the cat. I nearly forgot to ask. It turned into a pig, Alice answered very quietly, just as if the cat had come back in a natural way. I thought it would, said the cat, and vanished again. Alice waited a little, half expecting to see it again, but it did not appear, and after a minute or two she walked on in the direction in which the March Hare was said to live. I've seen hatters before, she said to herself. The March Hare will be much the more interesting. And perhaps, as this is May, it won't be raving mad. At least, not so mad as it was in March. As she said this, she looked up, and there was the cat again, sitting on a branch of a tree. Did you say a pig or fig? Said the cat. I said pig, replied Alice, and I wish you wouldn't keep appearing and vanishing so suddenly. You make one quite giddy. All right, said the cat, and this time it vanished quite slowly, beginning with the end of the tail and ending with the grin, which remained some time after the rest of it had gone. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wave, were a mimsy, and the borogoves and the bone wrasse out grave. Well, I've often seen a cat without a grin, thought Alice, but a grin without a cat? It's the most curious thing I've ever saw in all my life. She had not gone much farther before she came inside of the house of the March Hare. She thought it might be the right house because the chimneys were shaped like ears and the roof was thatched with fur. It was so large a house that she did not like to go nearer till she had nibbled some more of the left-hand bit of a mushroom and raised herself to about 2 feet high, even though she walked up towards it rather timidly, saying to herself, Suppose she should be raving mad after all. I almost wish I'd gone to see the Hatter instead. And that, dear friends and dear children, is where we will end for tonight. We don't have them much further to go on. But I hope you enjoyed our reading today. Also, I have a treat to show you. I had a friend of mine point this out to me. Shout out to Dark Star Bookstore. I got this awesome new stationery. It's unicorn themed. It's pretty cool. And it comes with blank pages and illustrated pages and 12 albums. So I've already used one. So if anybody would like some, which Tinu, I hope your postcard has gotten to you. If not, I'll try to check at the post office to see if it got sent back to me. But thank you all so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe on the YouTube channel. I really would appreciate the support. Please subscribe. It only takes 5 seconds, y'all. Only takes 5 seconds, and I'd really appreciate the help.